James Gilliland Update. April 2, 2017. Self-mastery, tools for transcending the ego, and healing unseen negative influences. Masters often say the mind is a good servant, but a terrible master. In the past, the mind has taken many of us on a journey of unfulfillment, and dead ends. It is like giving your car to a really bad driver repeatedly, but you cannot take away the keys. It is also like an addiction to a way that is known, a comfort zone, even though this comfort zone has never brought you happiness. James Gilliland. The mind of which I speak is often referred to as the ego, programmed through social consciousness. Is that mind really yours? Is it really who you are? Where did you get the beliefs that create your reality? Who were you before those beliefs? Did you ever contemplate the possibility that you had other lives? Let's expand beyond that into other dimensions. What were your beliefs in these other lives and dimensions? Were the rules the same, the laws of physics? What if your body was an adaptation to environment, and looked much different than the body you occupy now? What if you had an energy body, or a magnetized light body? What if in your origin you came from the very source, pure consciousness, and energy endowed with the same attributes of the Creator? What if that was your beginning, and you decided to go on a journey descending down through the vibrational continuum, expressing on many planes and dimensions, experiencing many incredible lives, until you decided to take the ultimate challenge, and descend into mass? What if that journey included forgetting who you were, your entire past? What if it left you floundering in the limitations of mass, stuck in a little body totally helpless, and dependent on your mother? This vast being, now tucked in that little body, powerless over its environment, not knowing the future, and having no memory of the past? Thus is the untold story of humankind. Limitations. If you are truly an ageless soul, a multi-dimensional spirit, whose roots go all the way back to the source, a child of Creator once endowed with the same love, joy, bliss, and creational powers, how do you remember? The answer to that is: how did you forget? When you know how you forgot, and where the memories reside, then you are on the path to awakening. It is often a battle with external forces keeping you from your internal awakening. It is also a battle with the ego, societal programming, and unfortunately often family, friends, and society in general that wants you to stay within the herd. The biggest battle is within self. Yes, the biggest battle is within self. You will blame, project, validate your frustrations, angers, and predicaments on external forces, but ultimately it is you that is creating your reality. Holding oneself accountable and responsible, observing oneself often with brutal honesty, is the way out of the matrix. It is the way to remembering. The ego is very clever, yet it is not wise. It is designed to operate within its known environment. Many of its beliefs came from what has happened to the body it inhabits, and its surroundings, gathered through the five senses. What formed your ego? Your beliefs about who you are, and the world in which you live. Even the intellect is formed by what you have been exposed to here in the physical. Yet, is there a mind beyond that? Is there a mind that knows who you've been, all of your experiences, even what one would call past lives, and all the wisdom gained in those experiences? Expressions all the way back to the source. Can you know who you are from the intellect? Can you know who you are through books written by intellects? It is through the development of the ego, and the intellect that you got lost, forgot who you truly are, who you were. This is why every great master has said we have to transcend the ego, the intellect, to enter divine mind, and know your eternal multidimensional self. Buddha said we must observe things from a fresh mind, the mind of a child, to truly understand. Jesus said you must become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. What they are saying is you have to suspend the ego, the intellect, to tap into divine mind. This can be done by meditation, by initiations from those who have mastered the ego and intellect, making it the servant, and not the master. There are other plant medicines at times that can create the same effect, yet, with no training, and without a true master who can create and maintain sacred space, there is the possibility of blasting into levels and encountering unseen negative influences for which one is unprepared. Worst-case scenarios include possessions and attachments, and the inability to raise oneself from the lower-level frequency dimensions back into the heart. The yogis say the closer you get to nirvana, the more the demons rear their ugly heads. These entities are very clever, they know you better than you know yourself, and they will use every tactic possible to distract and derail you from enlightenment and your sole purpose. Friends and family caught up in social consciousness will also do the same. Very few have the self-mastery, or the courage to maintain their self-authority, and keep these influences away. The unseen negative influences will use the ego and the intellect to create problems where none exist, and rationalize staying within the confines of the ego and the intellect, or social consciousness. Reason this: if you are only using less than 10% of your brain, which can also be called the ego and the intellect, who is using the other 90%? If it is vacant, then it is like a beautiful house with no one home, a space to be occupied by consciousness that very well might not be your own. There will always be a war going on between the soul and the ego. Very few win that war. The ego will do everything possible to stay in charge, remain in the driver's seat. Regardless of the fact that it has taken you to multiple dead ends and car crashes. It will even try to use fear to judge and demonize and sabotage your awakening, as well as judge and demonize those who are part of your awakening. It will lull you into a false sense of security by maintaining the status quo, the comfort zones. It is very clever, yet as we said before, it is not wise. It will undermine your true self, the expanded version, and undermine your access to the love, joy, power, and wisdom which is your birthright. If you have gotten this far with this message, there is hope. Most will resist, or dismiss this altogether. Your ego will say, "Yeah, what about the real world?" To that we say, have you looked at the real world? The wars, the disease, the lack, countries governed by the elite who are spiritually bankrupt? All of this is solvable, if enough people choose higher mind, and operate from the heart. True humans do not act like non-humans, and do inhuman and inhumane things. Your soul will win in the end. The only question is, how much denial, and how much of a struggle does one want to engage in? How hard will the lessons have to be to let go of the ego and the intellect? Many have a great deal invested in the intellect, they will be the last ones to awaken. They will also have the hardest lessons, because they have the greatest attachment. What happens when you have years of study, have written books, have held positions of power and authority, only to find out it was all based on a lie? The truth is in the heart. Truth is flexible, expanding, and open to new ideas. The soul has the truth, it resides right next to the heart. It is the connector to God, Creator, Great Spirit, and the source of true, more expanded knowledge. Love is the key that opens the door. The ego and the intellect don't even know the door exists, and are clueless to what is behind it. How much one is entrenched in the ego is directly proportionate with its need to be right. Also, the need to defend exists in the ego. The ego is the only thing needing defense. The level of resistance is also an indicator of the ego, and unseen negative influences at work. It is amazing how much of your sadness, pain, frustration, and anger drop as soon as you set aside the ego and intellect. As soon as you suspend judgment and drop into the heart. There is a saying, don't sweat the small stuff. When you expand in awareness, it all becomes small stuff. With each challenge, we have the choice to meet it as a god, goddess, or a victim. It takes practice to step out of the matrix. Doubt and fear are the tools of the ego, and the negative influences. Arrogance within the ego, and the intellect, fueled by flattery, also become negative doorways. How can you be higher, or lower than anything, if you are one with everything? And, if you are one with everything, how do you harm or take advantage of anyone, or anything? Words without action are meaningless. Without giving tools to go along with the teachings, you are not being empowered. Understand what the masters meant when they said, know thyself, the temple is within. Ye are all gods. Stand tall in your own divinity, it is your birthright. Let no one, or no thing, take it all away from you. Stay in the heart. Be well. James Gilliland. acd.org